What's up guys, it's SHISUI. Welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about my top 15 manga recommendations.
Fuck you thinking ain't doing no more favors. Never need a nigga just to make me famous. Lil nigga flow go crazy, and them other niggas can't tame it. Flame it, all of the niggas that doubt it. All y'all niggas some cowards. All y'all niggas step up and get devoured. 6 feet deep with a bouquet of flowers. Tell me what am I supposed to do? Cause respect for mine is so overdue. I'm the best in it, just pay attention, take a closer view, cause I'm supposed to do.
Now, some of these mangas might do a better job at specific things as opposed to others, but I think what you're gonna consistently see is, having strong theme, having strong plot, the way the story structure is put together, the characters, the setting, the style and tone, and amongst other things that appeal to us beyond aesthetics as readers that we enjoy. So without further ado, let us begin. Okay guys, coming in at number 15 is a series called Radion, or Radiant for the English pronunciation. It was created by Tony Volante, who was inspired by Murata, who is famous for One Punch Man and iShield 21. Anyways, the series takes place in a sort of fantastic universe where monsters called Nemesis fall from the sky. They kind of remind me of kaiju from Pacific Rim. But anyways, so the origins of these monsters are unknown, but one thing is certain: they do not exist for anything good for mankind at the current point in the story. And people fear, society fears these creatures, that they will be infected by them. But the people who have survived these occurrences are known as the wizards, and they can control magic abilities known as Fantasia. Anyways, the series follows Seth, who is basically a young wizard living by his mentor, Alma, and he sort of leaves and goes off on this journey and meets people along the way that help him to, his long quest and goal, which is to eventually find, who's in search of Radiant. And I think the opposing force is the Inquisition, and they pretty much oppose the wizards of this universe, and they sort of get in the way. And it's the struggle he has between, fighting off these Inquisition, these people who are blinded by the sort of, what the truth is and what's going on necessarily with these, Nemesis creatures. And it's on this list. It's number 15 because I thought it's a good read. I think it's a sort of action adventure fantasy series done right, and I definitely recommend it. This series was recommended to me by a friend of mine named Silvers, so shout him out. And yeah, coming in at number 14, I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy this one, is The Promised Neverland. And I gotta say guys, I love reading this series on a week-to-week basis. So what is the synopsis? The series basically follows a girl named Emma and her 37 siblings living in this orphanage, or this house called Gracefield, and they sort of get taken care of by their mother, adoptively mother figure, who they refer to as Mama. So all the kids enjoy pretty much a comfortable life, good food, clean clothes, perfect environment to learn. What more could you ask for, right? Anyways, one day Emma and Norma sort of uncover the dark and twisted truth of the outside world they're forbidden from seeing, and from there it's just like this whole mission of, okay, we gotta escape from this place and find a way out. It takes place in the year 2045, and it's just a whole adventure, dark fantasy, science fiction, thriller series, and I really enjoy it. And it's something that I highly recommend to watch. There are currently 11 volumes of the manga. It's been on a 2-year run, but the animation television series is starting January 11, 2019, so I'm super excited for that. Coming in at number 13 is Dead Man Wonderland. So the series is about a massive earthquake that sort of destroys Japan's mainland and destroys most of Tokyo. And then 10 years later, the story shifts to sort of this character named Ganta Igarashi. And he's sort of this ordinary student attending this middle school. And as an escapee, sort of a survivor of this earthquake, he has no memories of the tragedy and pretty much has lived a normal life. That all changes when this guy covers in blood and Crimson Armor sort of kind of floats through the classroom, grinning and whatever, and sort of this red man massacres, quote unquote red man massacres all of his entire class, but instead of killing them, he gives them this red crystal shard in his chest, and then like after a few days, he is declared the student Gonta main characters sort of viewed as the main suspect, and then following this sort of trial, he's sentenced to sort of a life imprisonment in Dead Man Wonderland, and it's sort of this massive theme park like prison. And I gotta say, this series is just, it's something you gotta read if you enjoy these sort of kind of stories. It's it's something, this genre is adventure thriller as well. And anyways, it has a TV series, but it's like 12 episodes and like I think an OVA, but the manga is definitely something you should read. It's completely done, so it's written by Kazumo Kandu, and I think you should definitely check it out. Coming in at number 12 is Soul Eater. Written and illustrated by Atsushi Okobu. It is sort of this action-adventure comedy, got a little drama and fantasy in there. So the story basically is about Death City, and it's home to this famous death weapon Meister Academy, and it's an academy headed by the Shinigami Lord Death himself. Its mission basically is to raise death sifts for the Shinigami to wield against the many evils of their fantastic fantasy world. And these death sifts, however, are not made from physical weapons, rather they are born from human hybrids who have the ability to transform their bodies into demon weapons, and only after they have consumed the souls of 99 evil beings and one witch's soul. So Soul Eater Evans, a death sift who only seems to care about what's cool, aims to become a death sift with the help of his straight-laced wielder, or Meister Maka Arbart. The contrasting duo basically work together and study together, and it's a pretty cool series, and it follows these students of this academy as they take on one mission, to collect souls and protect the city from the world's threats while working together, and it's a really good series that I think you guys should read. And it has an anime adaptation that's like I think 51 episodes that aired like 10 years back, but I think the manga does just a better job of fleshing out these characters, and the shading and tones is really nice, and the character designs. So yeah, that's coming in at number 12. Alright guys, coming in at number 11 is Vinland Saga. Now this series is written by Makoto Yukimura, and it has a total of 21 volumes, and I believe the anime show is scheduled for this year, although we don't know when. Anyways, the series takes place in England. It's set in England in 1013 AD, and this is the year in which the Danish king conquers most of England. And the series follows sort of Thorfinn, who basically was mentored by Eriksson, and he sort of loves the thrill of wild tales and hears about this land far to the west. But his youthful fantasies are shattered by this sort of raid that happens in his village. So raised by the Vikings who murdered his family, Thorfinn becomes a terrifying warrior, forever seeking to kill the band's leader and avenge his father. And then Thorfinn basically, through his ordeal and his pride in his family and his dreams of this fertile land that's west, a land without war or slavery, and it's titled Finland. And so this series is a little more up the seinen alley. It's a little bit darker than the series that I've mentioned before, but I think it's really well done, and I think it's something you guys should read, especially if you're into that lore, that sort of fantasy lore that happens, and sort of fiction and truth sort of blending and meshing together. It paints a very vivid image, and I think I think it's definitely something you should read up on. Coming in at number 10 is Berserk. Now, you've probably heard the name whispered or seen it mentioned on someone's list, and if you have the stomach for guts and gore and violence and humanity and questioning, well, what's good and evil, then this is the series I recommend for you. And it's one of the longest running mangas, and it's pretty consistently dark, and it's very emotional, but it's powerful and it's rewarding. So the series is done by Kentaro Mura. Now, it's basically follows the story of this swordsman, Guts, and he sort of hunts down his mortal enemy, Griffith. And at first, the story seems cut from the same cloth as other sort of grim, dark, wish-fulfilling epic fantasy series. Guts carries with him this the Dragon Slayer. Is really, really tall, a sword, and it weighs twice as much as him. And he hunts down these like grotesque demons called apostles. And it's pretty cool. And it's almost silly, in the beginning, considering from where it starts and where it ends, it becomes one of or where it's continued onto is become one of the greatest literary works of manga of all time. And it's basically the ultimate struggle of not against monsters but destiny itself. Yeah, so I recommend that you start with the first 4 volumes, since it gives you a good sense of the general flavor of the story. If you like that sort of, then you can continue on to the Golden Arc, and then so on and so on. And this is a 20-year-old story, and it's a bit hard to find these days, but you can I recommend looks coming through on Amazon and so on. The animation did a terrible job of this series. The CGI I just think is just but it's one of those things where if you love the series Berserk, you watch it anyways. But yeah, so this coming in at number 10, Berserk. Coming in at number 9 is The Gray Man. The series follows basically Alan Walker, who becomes this exorcist and a member of this European branch of the Black Order. So basically, after losing a loved one, it is very painful, and sometimes people wish to be able to resurrect them, a weakness that the enigmatic Millennial Earl exploits to make his mechanical weapon known as Akuma. He uses the souls of the dead that are called back, and once a soul is placed in this Akuma, it is trapped forever, and the only way to save them is to exorcise them from their vessel using the anti-Akuma weapon, Innocence. After spending 3 years basically as a disciple of General Cross, Alan Walker is basically sent to the Black Order, an organization comprised of those willing to fight these Akuma and the Earl to become an official exorcist. He fights them with this arm called Innocence and a cursed eye that can see the suffering souls within the Akuma. And it's up to him and his fellow exorcists to stop the Earl's ultimate plot, which is destruction of the world. The synopsis is pretty straightforward, but I think the reason why I put this at number 9 on my list is because it sort of took me by surprise. It wasn't necessarily a story that I thought I was going to enjoy as much as I did. So I think I definitely recommend it for you to watch. There's also a TV series. It's about like 103 episodes. Okay, coming in at number 8 is One Punch Man, a webcomic done by One and later re-illustrated by Murata. Now, you might be surprised, taken back, why I put this at number 8. I think it's one of the most underrated series, especially considering the artwork is just so phenomenally well done and executed, and just the witty banter and the comedic references. It's super good. Anyways, the series follows a character named Saitama, who in the beginning wasn't very strong at all, but he trains for 3 years doing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and 10 kilometers run every day with no air conditioner. I just think on the surface it's just utterly ridiculous, and he fights sort of these counters superheroes, monsters, villains of all sorts, with his gang of pals of Fubuki and King and Genos, and it's just hilarious. And you meet all these throughout these 100 or so chapters. You meet all these characters that you really come to enjoy. All of these S-rank heroes and so on. And I love this series, and I think anyone who's watching this video who's also reading this series can agree. It's great. So yeah, it's coming in at number 8, and I think it deserves its spot. yeah, even though Saitama is this overly strong character who basically one-shots pretty much anyone in the verse with the exception of a couple people, it's just the way it's done. He isn't the primary focus all the time, and I think it's well done. I think it's definitely coming from a different perspective. It reminds me a lot of Western comics, and yeah, I think it's something that you will enjoy. It's definitely something fun to read. Coming in at number 7 on this list is Magi. Now, this series is one of my personal favorites, and we're not even going to talk about the anime that I think they did such a phenomenal job. Shout out to A1 Pictures. But the reason why I had chosen the manga to put on this list as opposed to the anime, and why I didn't leave it out, is because I think they both do a great job. It's just that the anime did not finish the series. It's not completed. They went on and did the prequels, which is The Adventures of Sinbad, and so on. So anyways, after being secluded for his entire life, a boy called Aladdin basically travels the world with his friend Ugo, and which is the Jinn, which is contained within Aladdin's flute. He meets this boy named Alibaba, Saluja, basically this young man aiming to one day explore the nearby dungeon Aman and claim his treasures. So then Aladdin and Alibaba basically eventually become friends and conquer Aman together. And despite facing the opposition of the ruthless opposers and slave oppressors, he later on meets Morgiana, and after a desperate fight, the two protagonists sort of fend off with the assist of Morgiana, and they break free. And then from there, it is known that briefly explained that he is a Magi, and that Alibaba is his king's candidate. And sort of they get thrown on these sort of series of adventures and separate locations, and eventually reunite, and it's this back and forth world and exploration of the magical powers of Rukia and how that all gets fleshed out into the importance of the story. Anyways, I'm not going to go on too much about it because I can go on and on for days, but I think it's something you should I definitely read, and I highly recommend if you're into that fantasy magical world. And it's the comedic banter is just off the charts. So yeah. Coming in at number 6 is Slam Dunk. Now, for all of the people watching this video right now that are sort of my more manga friendly people who have read some of Inoue's series and know that Real is I think the better rated series, there's a reason why I'm recommending this one first, because I think if you're getting into manga and if you're reading into series, I think this is the first one you have to read before. But anyways, the series follows this sort of delinquent kid and leader of a gang, and Sakuragi, and he's very, very unpopular. He gets rejected like 50 times, and then he attends this high school and he finds this girl he has a crush on, and sort of to impress her, he joins the basketball team because he figures he's actually pretty athletic. So it goes from him trying to sort of prove his skills and him trying to not be extremely immature and having this hot temper, and it goes all the way up into becoming this national championships. Everything, all the stakes are on the line, and you're clenching your cheeks together at every scene and every panel. And it's amazingly well done series. You can watch the anime film that they did on it, or the television show, which is TV series, which is 100 or so episodes. But I think the manga is where it's at. It's a 90s. It was written in the 90s, and I think the whole entire series is completed, all 31 volumes. And I think it's a fun, enjoyable read, and I highly recommend that you should check this out. Coming in at number 5 is Kingdom. Now this series is in my top 10 favorite manga of all time, but never mind about my personal bias. The reason why I recommend it on this list is because it's this historical fiction account of the warring state periods of China, And I think out of all the manga on this list, it is very, very strategy based, and it's just phenomenal. I think it's filled with everything: comedy, romance, violence, gore. It's filled with all of that, and I really, really, really highly recommend this series. And it basically follows Shin, who and his account of from third person perspective of basically how he becomes one of the 6 great generals, and it's just filled with all these interactions of phenomenal characters. He begins the series by he's an orphan, 2 orphans, and they dream of becoming one of the great generals of the heavens, and they fight day in and day out. And after his friend Poe is killed, he meets someone that looks like him, and it just carries on to be, and it just starts off so small and just gradually becomes larger, and this experience is just, you go through and you watch, and reading week to week is such an experience as you follow Shin and the High Shin unit, and Kyokai and Oki and Hoken, and it's just so well done, and I highly recommend that you read this series. So stop whatever you're doing and pick this up. It's about like 500 or so chapters, but I read this series in 4 days. So yeah. Okay, coming in at number 4 is Air Gear, written and illustrated by Oh Great. It's one of his best series. Well, anyways, the series follows a sort of student delinquent, and he's the leader of this gang known as the East Side Guns. It's filled with this sort of air trek world, which are these sort of skates, and it starts off as a sort of action sports adventure series, and later on it develops into this ridiculous manga, filled with insane feats and amazing cool characters. I read this series when I was first starting off with manga, so it's very, very close to heart. But it's really cool. It's got some very, very good characters, and the reception of the series is highly rated. Although I think this personally is my second favorite series from him. It has like 37 volumes, and it's really good, and I highly recommend it. Okay, coming in at number 3, Sun Ken Rocky. Yes, this is in my top 10 favorite manga of all time, and I highly recommend you read. The story follows Ken, and he's basically this delinquent in high school who falls in love with this young Korean girl who wants to be a police officer. But then, and she moves to Korea, and he drops out of school to follow her. And he has dreams of, leaving behind his life of violence and becoming a police officer like her. But then he gets roped into this gang life once more, after this leader sort of notices his strength and values him as member to, and wants him to join immediately. So it's like, okay, what will happen to him and his relationship and this person who hates really gangs. It's a very emotional series, and it's well illustrated, and it's seinen, and it's done by one of my favorite mangakas, Boichi. And it's just really well done. It's a total of 170 chapters, but you can get done through this series pretty quickly, and I'm not really going to tell too much about the series. I want it to speak for itself, but if it's number 3 on my list, then it definitely speaks for itself. Coming in at number 2, this is in my top 10 favorite manga of all time, Tenjo fucking Tengi. Thank you so much to one of my friends for introducing me to this series. He goes by the name of Anaki, Lieutenant Smash. You know who you are. Anyways, the plot begins with Nagi and his friend Bob, and they go to this high school called Todo Academy, and they intended to rule the school by beating up anyone that got in their way. And as they had done in their previous schools, they soon learned that Todo is no ordinary high school, but rather a school that was founded to teach and integrate different fighting styles, and its students are skilled in the various arts of combat. And some of these students possess supernatural abilities. such as precognition and superhuman strength based on the abilities to use their spirit or ki in Japanese. And then, so after he has this altercation with the executive council, Nagi and Bob join the only surviving club that opposes them. And as storyline develops, both groups find they are becoming increasingly involved in a long, enduring conflict that was left unresolved from the Japanese feudal era by some of the characters' ancestors. This series is really done, and it's also done by the same author who has done Air Gear, and I think this is his better series, although that's pretty subjective. But anyways, I will do a review sometime later on this, but I just think it's so good. It starts off as this high school, delinquents and really cool martial art style, then really attractive females and powerful, strong females and characters, and it's really cool. And then all of a sudden, it just takes you back into the storyline of feudal Japan, and you're like, whoa! You get thrust into this like really cool narrative, and I definitely highly recommend this series. It is number 2 on my list. Coming in at number 1, Vagabond. This series is my number 1 recommended series. It is also my favorite manga of all time. Make no mistake, out of all the series Inoue has done, Real, Slam Dunk, Buzzer Beater, this is by far my favorite one. So what is the series about? The series takes place in 16th century Japan, and it follows the sort of wild, rough young man character who's known for his brutal, rough appearance and his actions on his aggressive nature. And sort of the village sort of fears and, doesn't really approach him. And sort of that leads him and his best friend to run away and search for something grander than the life they live. And the pair enlist in the Toyotomi army, and they yearn for glory. But when this army suffers a crushing defeat at the Battle of Sekigahara, the friends barely make it out alive. And after the two are separated, after his return home, to notify the family, the head of the family, of the survival, he instead finds himself a wanted criminal, framed for his friend's supposed murder based on his history of violence. And upon being captured, he's strung up on his tree and left to die. He gets saved by this monk who takes pity on this quote-unquote devil child and secretly frees him and christenings him with the new name to avoid being pursued by the authorities. And Vagabond is the fictitious retelling of the life of one of Japan's most renowned swordsmen, the sword saint Musashi Miyamoto, and his rise from a swordsman with no desire other than to become the invincible under the heavens to an enlightened warrior who slowly learns of the importance of close friends, self-reflection, and life itself. This, I talked about earlier about sort of breaking the reality of reality and fiction, and making you feel all of these authentic thoughts and feelings, and sort of the appeal and the story structure and the characters and the storylines and the subplots, how well they complement the narrative. This is the story that does it. For me, I have watched this series. I've read this series multiple times, and I have yet to find anything wrong with it. It's just so well done. It's number 1 on my recommended. It's number 1 on my top 10 mangas of all time, and I highly, most literally recommend this series. Okay guys, that's gonna do it for me today. Let me know if you want to see individual videos on each of the manga that I have listed in this list. With that being said, like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, you can find me in the Discord link, and stay tuned for my next videos.